Welcome to the Country Fried Outdoors Chasing Your Experience podcast. The podcast that will connect you to resources regionally and nationwide to engage them in open, honest discussions so that we can inspire the growth that you need to chase the experience you want. So strap yourself in because here we go. Well, everyone, welcome to the Chasing Your Experience podcast. This is the second video recorded episode in the second episode with our little mini series with James Holm, the Scrape Doctor. By the way, James, welcome to the podcast yet again. I appreciate you taking time to join us.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me back again. This is going to be good. I hope everybody enjoys what they're going to get out of this series. And we hope that we're giving them some good information that's going to help them improve their mock scrape game and maybe just their hunting experience overall. Not necessarily just the mock scrape thing, but their hunting experience overall.
It's at the very least, it'll be another tool for the tool belt for them as they move on and throughout hunting or however they want to hunt. It's something else they can add to their tool belt that they can use to, create a pattern and take advantage of, the natural behavior of deer to benefit them, create them ambush spots that they need or whatever they want to do with it. So, nope. You know what? I've already got some comments from our previous time together, especially now because we're starting to get out some little teasers here and there. And I've got some people that's been looking at the previous podcast now, trying to get caught up. One of my buddies now, he's doing that. He's like, man, I got through the first. He's like, I started backwards. I started on the third one. And then now I went back and did the first one. And I'm about halfway through the second one. And he's like, I'm sold. Like, I am sold. I'm ready to roll. What do I need to get? I'm like, well, I'll tell you what I think. But, here's, I would, go here. Here's what I would tell you to get. And I told him, I said, I would probably get 2 different lengths of rope. I said, I don't think you need to go crazy on ropes right now. Get a couple of good bases started, get a couple different, 1 or 2 different lengths of rope. So you got some variance so you can set them at a height as you need to, which by the way, that's going to be the topic of this episode is height. But before we get to that, well, we got some things to get through. And then I said, I would at least get about 2 balls of Scrape Magic. And because when I got through last year, and we were talking a little bit before this went live, and I was like, I think I went through about 1.5 bottles of Scrape Magic by the time the whole season was done. It's going to be a little slow. You're going to not go through as much at first. And then as the season progresses on, when you start opening up, like we talked about, I think probably the second episode, when we start opening up a lot more, you're going to go through a little bit quicker. But I was definitely through about 1.5 bottles, and I was working 2 different properties. So
yeah, that seems pretty consistent, honestly, with what you're going to use on a normal basis. I'm obviously going to use way more than that in a year, but I'm not just operating on one place either. So, but yeah, that seems like a reasonable amount to me, honestly.
Yeah, I think I ended up running I think I maybe had three or I think I'm at the most 3 ropes on one property, but I did a lot of natural, licking branches.
Yeah. The leading ins and the leading outs, they're the ones that do all the work, honestly. The hanging ropes and the vines get all the glory, and those leading licking branches get all the work.
They do to get them up there to where you need them to be. And I still can't get over though. What I really can't get over is how much focus everyone else puts on everything on the ground, right? And not the branch itself. And we touched on this in the last episode we talked on. It's like, be honest with you, most of the time I've seen a deer working, especially last year, was in the licking branch because I actually started paying attention to that. I've seen some pawing here and there, but does, I barely seen them paw on the ground. If I did, it was very minimal. Bucks, maybe a couple, but most of the time I've seen them working a scrape, they were working that licking branch. Yeah. And most of the time when I see a buck actually scraping the ground, it's like an aggressive thing that I see. It's like an act of aggression from him. The best one I seen, this was several years ago, and he was a tank of a buck, but he was on a hot doe, and he had a buck that was with him, that was circling around him, and he was uber, and then he just was pawing up the ground, grunting, snorting, so it was an aggressive act. I mean, he made a scrape, but it was more out of aggression, frustration, than it was as a marking tool.
Yeah, and that's, I think a lot of that people see that I think a lot of that is just that, a release of frustration. And guys happen to catch
Mhm.
that from the stand, not so much necessarily on a trail camera because that scrape's already there. A lot of times you'll see that act of that letting out that aggression on a branch or on a bush like that. And it's as they walk by, and it just happens to be at eye level and it happens to be right in the right place. It's not always right where there's another scrape. Well, that's how new scrapes get started right there. They blast that licking branch open by blowing out all that aggression. And now the next doe that comes by rubs her face in it. And now he comes back and he goes, oh, wait, look what I did. And now he's ripping the ground and he takes a
Hmm.
leap and now he's in the licking branch again. And now the cycle has started. Now you've got a natural one there that will become a direct result also of spraying those natural branches as you walk. Natural scrapes will blow open along that same path. It might even be on the opposite side of the logging trail or the path that you're on. They'll zigzag down the roads, down those logging trails.
Hmm.
So yeah, the situation that we've got with the new product that you and I discussed is in a place just like that where there are zigzag up and down the road. And one of the spaces, the scrape actually goes from side to side all the way across the road. In between,
Okay.
we hung a poison ivy there and they started a natural licking branch on the opposite side of that after Adam sprayed it with scrape magic. He just sprayed a few leaves that were there and they turned that whole area into a scrape. And we have pictures somewhere of the four wheeler or the tractor, one of the two parked in the scrape, and you can still see scrape on either side of it. I think it was the tractor. So it's a really big scrape and it's there all the time now. I mean, it's constant. There's deer in it. And that's where we have now hung the new product. And like I told you off air there, the pictures started rolling in immediately, like 4 hours after we hung it. We got our first set of pictures and then another set of pictures about an hour after that. We've had a mature buck in it already. So that's a promising sign. So stay
It
tuned for
is.
more on that. It'll be announced before this all airs, I'm sure.
Well, I'll be looking at your Instagram and TikTok reels because I'll start seeing a lot of this once you guys are ready to start throwing that out there.
Yeah. Yeah, and the content will come fast. So
Oh yeah.
as usual.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So I want to touch on what you said there that you may get a natural one show up in that location. So that's exactly what happened in one of our spots. Is I was at well, they had to open the road up because they had a lot of deadfall that, there was a storm that went through and knocked a lot of trees over. So he had a outfit come in and kind of clear some of that up.
Yeah.
So one of the trails or one of the roads that they had made, we're going on like year 2 now. So it's starting to grow up now. It's starting to, not look like, I mean, it looks like a road, but there's a lot of like foliage coming up in it. So I went ahead and put a scrape up a little bit higher on the road and I went a little bit down, a little bit lower on the road and put scrapes in. And I put a camera on the lower one. I didn't worry about the top one. I was more worried about the lower one because it kind of connected and it was almost like a hub down there, where a couple of different fingers of the ridge lines and stuff came together because that's the one I wanted to watch. And so I'd go back, I would check the camera not every week, but I'd let it soak for a little bit. Then I'd go check it and I'd get some activity on it. Eventually I'd get a decent buck here and there. But the funny thing about this was, even though I've got these two set up, there's one they put right in between the two of them. They actually they made like I didn't do it, and I asked the property owner, I said, "Did you make that scrape down there?" He goes, "No, that wasn't me." So they came in and made a scrape in between those two. So whatever, because there's a couple of different bucks that were kind of working that area. I think it was right on the fringe of a territory of a couple different bucks.
Okay.
And so we had one very wide 10 point, and then another one that was just a really nice symmetrical. He would probably go 10 too, but he was more taller than he was wide. He was a nice looking buck. But those two were kind of working that area. And I think one of them just said, well, I don't know if this is your scrape or not, but I'm going to put mine here.
Yeah. Well, he knew whose scrape it was. That's why that scrape, one of them knew whose was whose, and that's why it went there. So, is that on your ropes that you've got hanging now, or was that before you started using our stuff?
that was with your guys' stuff, because I honestly, before I talked to you in Columbus, I really didn't do a whole lot of mock scrapes. If I did, it was the typical normal
Yeah.
wait till rut and or pre-rut, make a couple because you think you're going to pull them into that location because you just made a one or two.
Yeah.
And I think we talked last podcast about the success that may or may not come from that was just happenstance. It was just because it happened. It wasn't, a true pattern that was developed. It was just happened to be a buck that was coming through that time. And that's what it pretty much became. And I quit doing it because I really didn't see, I can be honest, I didn't see the value in it and or to continue on because I've tried different, I'm not gonna name names.
Yeah.
I've tried different products, I've tried this, I've tried that, just basically what you see from the talking heads on the TVs.
Yeah.
And it just didn't seem to work like I wanted it to, right? And so I just kind of got away from it. And then you and I started talking after we met there in Columbus. And then you agreed to come on the podcast, which I'm forever grateful for. And I kind of really opened my eyes to like a different view of how mock scrapes should be done. And I'm like, all right, let's roll with this. Yeah. And I got to tell you, it's night and day difference from what I've experienced before and what I'm experiencing now. And like we immediately was getting deer activity on our spots that we created, like immediately. So I'm definitely, I'm into it. And I've also heard other people talk about they've been in the mock scrape. Now, whatever version they do, then they didn't explain it. They just said they do a mock scrapes and they've had success with it. And I'm like, all right, well, let's give this thing a try. And I'm glad I did. So
we're glad you did.
Here we are today.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm grateful for all the opportunities to be on all these times now and keep preaching it and just keep putting it out there and telling people, and just keep trying to teach. I guess it's not so much even telling people, but just trying to teach people, that, look, I mean, I get it. I get it. The argument is there. All it wants to be there that I'm wrong and we're wrong and we're not going to get anything to happen this way. But all the videos and all the pictures prove otherwise. I mean, if people would just open their eyes just for a second and listen and not be so stuck on you hit it pretty good, the talking heads, listen to the guy that you don't know who he is just once. It might help, I'm not by any means saying that I know everything. And just because I say you should do this, that you're going to have the best success you've ever had in your whole entire life. With mock scrapes, probably yes. That I agree with, I will say. But as far as deer hunting success, that's still on you. Only you can determine that success. I'm not pulling the trigger or sending that arrow. That's you. So, but other than that, yeah, I mean, I appreciate it. You've helped me more than you've opened doors for me to talk to other people, and I appreciate that.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that, and I'm humbled by that. And I'm just a small deal. I think this is more about you and what you're doing is what's gathering the information, gathering the attention for you. So it's more you than it is me. But I will definitely talk to people if they have a question about what I'm doing with it. So
right, that's that's all we ask for is for the people that are using it to talk about it, good or bad. I want to hear the bad too, but I've yet to hear very much of that. And that's a good thing. I don't mind that either. But I do expect some too. We got to be realistic. Can't please everybody all the time. So
yeah, you're right. You're going to get some kickback on whatever you do, right? Not everyone's going to agree with 100% what you say, and you're going to have to expect that it's going to happen. And if you don't get it, then you're just surrounding yourself with a bunch of people that just are either yes men and women, or they just don't want to they don't want to rock the boat. They're just like, yeah, whatever. I mean, it's good. You're doing great.
It's easier to
what do
go
you really
along
learn
with than to go against, Joe.
Yeah. And I see that a lot. I see that a lot in almost every field I've ever been involved in. You have the ones
every
who
facet of
want to
life
be disruptors. What's that?
Every facet of life that happens.
For sure. So last episode, we discussed a lot about why to get started on things, right? And I like to start with why when we have discussion, especially if we're going to talk about, trying to move the needle a little bit, because if you don't understand why you're doing something, then everything else doesn't make any sense to you, right? So I'm glad we were able to get out.
Why you're doing it, why do it? I mean,
right. So, why do it at all?
Right.
So but I think we started to touch a little bit about failures or why people fail with these. And I think one of the things that most people forget or most people don't think about is how high they set their mock scrapes up, right? And you've talked about before in a podcast with me that a lot of people need to lower their expectations. Because what the average height of a deer, shorter height, 3 to 4 feet, they're not as tall as people think they are.
Right. 39
So
inches.
yeah, but so they're not overly tall. So let's talk about height and when placing these mock scrapes, or what height we're looking for, and some good gauges and some lookouts into why we should focus on this height versus what does it look like if it's too high, what happens if it's too low. Let's talk about those aspects. What do you think?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Perfect. We can. Exactly. The thing with the height thing there, Sean, is I'm not sure that you can go too low, honestly, because whatever you're using, a rope or whatever, as it gets closer to the ground, they can still reach it and rub on it and all of that. They can still do all of that lower.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's up too high, they can't reach it. They're going to walk under it. They're not going to get the scent. The scent's above their head now if you're way up high. Okay. Which means if you come in to a natural licking branch that's at eyeball height or nose height, somewhere in that area, right in your face, it's too high. The deer can walk under that easily. I mean, their head goes right under that. So bring that down to natural stuff, especially those bushes that I talk about walking and spraying between your knees and your waist. That's optimum height. A deer's going to walk up and stick their head out, a doe especially, and it's going to come in somewhere right around in that zone, because an adult doe is still even smaller than an adult buck. So she's going to be somewhere below your waist when she comes walking in at natural height at a relaxed stance, just standing there with her nose forward. She's going to hit that at your waist or below. They're just not very big. So somewhere, and I've explained this now for quite a long time and used those analogies for height, waist to chest, somewhere in that zone. That's your hot spot. That's the sweet spot. So what that amounts to measurement wise is everybody seems to want a number. So we can start that at 40 inches from the bottom of a rope. Start at 40 inches. It's going to put you right at your
Okay.
belly button, basically. If you stick a stiff tape measure down on the ground and come up 40 inches, it's going to land somewhere around your belly button. So start there and go 40 to 44 inches. So you're in this zone, unless you're an absolute giant man where your torso's, you're wearing a 39, 38 shirt with extra long, extra long and all that, because you got these big, huge arms. Unless you're that guy and normal. So we're going to have to start explaining, I guess, with numbers instead of body parts, because it's to the point now where it's starting to, the water is getting muddied for people. And I don't want it to be confusing. I want it to be simple, you know? So I figured and the reason I guess I explained it the way I did for so long was because your waist is a pretty simple measurement, but not everybody's waist is in the same place. Simple as that. I mean,
It is. I want to ask, what do you think most people think they need to set these things up at their face?
I think it's honestly my opinion on that has always been because they see these deer up on their hind legs in the scrapes. That's the pictures they see in the videos of these deer going up on their hind legs to work up above. And they think that they need to be super high up in the air, but that's where the deer like to do it. That's where they do it. It's normal. Well, it's not. It's because there's nothing down low. It's just a frustration factor. That scrape that you found that opened up between the two ropes could have been exactly that. Maybe there was something going on. They couldn't get a good work on your rope. They got frustrated, went down there and made one there, and then went on to the next rope. A lot of times that's what'll happen. We've talked about that. That's why we hang those poison ivies in those big gaping overhangs where there's a scrape. Well, that's because they've broken everything out of there. There's nothing left. And it doesn't seem like, in my experience, which has been for a while, they won't go from, say, like right here in this scrape and then this gets broken out. You see it. when you walk up, you can see a tree that's had a scrape in it a lot of years because it'll get a dome in it where everything's broken. They just don't seem to move just that 2 feet or 3 feet to one side or the other to get those branches that are right here. They'll go 20 yards and make another scrape, or go to the opposite side of that apple tree and make a scrape. They won't just move over a little bit and do them side by side and make a big one. It just doesn't seem to happen that way ever.
Yeah. And so when they jump up like that, say they get up on their hind legs, are they trying to break something down to bring it lower, or
they're trying to get something broken down that they can work on, that they can reach?
okay?
Because they're not meant to stand and walk on their back feet. So that's a very unbalanced position when they're up in the bushes, like, in the branches like that. So they're not getting a lot of leverage on that preorbital in there, rubbing on that. They can't drag that down to the ground because it's too high in the air to get it to work on it. Cause you've seen them do that too. Pull branches down and work that way. They can't do that because it's too high. So then you go in and you hang something like a poison ivy there that hangs down farther than even the just a rope squared, because that's longer yet, the poison ivy. So you hang one of those there, and now you've got a permanent vine there, like hanging a grapevine, only better.
And so that brings me to a thought, because I think what a lot of people might miss out on when it comes to this is they hang their scrape, or they hang their rope, or they make their little mock scrape, whatever it is they do, their licking branch, and they just see deer just walk past it, and literally the deer are walking under it and not touching it, and that's obviously a sign that that is too high. Then
Yes,
they need to bring that
absolutely.
down.
Yes. If they can walk under it,
And
they can't. If they can walk under it, then the deer we're trying to get to work these areas, which every area we set up, we want it to become communal. We want that to happen, right? So you can't have a communal scrape if the whole community can't use it. So if all your fawns and your young does are walking underneath that, and only the biggest of the big deer can even think about working that, it's useless. But you bring that down where those fresh fawns with spots can stretch up there and reach it and jump around underneath it and get excited because they can smell it. Now you're starting to do something, because then big sister's coming, mom's coming, mom's there for sure. So now my big sister's there. There's some button bucks coming around now that the mom hasn't chased away yet. They're working it. Your bachelor groups are coming to hit it now. And it's because it's down where they can get it. It's if deer are walking under it, it's too high. Right away, that's the first thing I say. Too high.
see, that's something I ran into in one of my spots, and I want to run something by you. So a lot of the locations that I hunt, there is it's we're on the foothills of the Appalachian, right? So we have hills, right? And one of the things I noticed was that even though I'm standing and I set this and I'm on an incline going up, right? If I set this at my waist, right, or a little bit below, it still seemed like it was too high for the direction the deer were coming. So I guess what I was going to ask you was, so in that situation, like say you're on those inclines, would you think it's safer to just go ahead and hang it lower than higher then? Because you say there's no such thing as too low then.
I have one in particular pops into my mind, one location. It's an apple tree. I'll send you the video when we get off here. One of the ropes, it's two Justa ropes. This is my short ones. One of the ropes, the bottom of the rope is hanging at my waist, and the other one is hanging just below my knees, and I've got it bent. It's bent like this, just a little bit sticking straight out. And when the deer walk up to the one that's below my knees, because of that slope and the lay of the land, they walk up and their nose into it when they walk to it. If they come from
Okay.
the opposite side, it's above their head. They can walk under it and work it from the back. So, and it's the
Okay.
slope of the land is all it is. So no, you can't hanging it too low won't hurt. Too low, they'll still smell it as the smell comes up. Thermals don't work quite like that with field edges and things like that. You know what I mean? In a flat, you're not going to get that rise and fall. Not going to get that to drag it down into the scrape so much. Yes, your heavier air is going to sink that scent some, but it's still, they're going to walk under that you've seen it on video. I've I've watched so many deer walk under people's branches, and no matter what they use, if it's too high, it's too high.
Yeah, it was weird because if they came from below, like a certain angle, they came from below, and basically, if you can imagine this, if they're coming in this direction, going that way towards it, they can get under it, and most of the time they're paying attention to it. But if they came from the other direction, coming back towards, or more of a more parallel, or I would say perpendicular to this
Yeah.
original trail, they would hit it because they could. It was right there in their face. I'm like, man, I probably should taste that just a little bit lower. And this
And
year when I go out to
you've talked to me
go ahead.
enough to know that nothing is too much or nothing is too little. Nothing outside the box is wrong. You can't do it wrong. You'll get a reaction one way or the other. You're going to know.
Mm-hmm.
And the camera's going to tell you immediately whether, whoops, I shouldn't have done that, or, hey, they really like that. And I'm not telling anyone. I mean, there are a lot of things that guys, I'm sure there are guys using our system and my system and that guy's system. We all do it. My system didn't come from just me. You know what I mean? We've talked about that. You take a little bit from everybody, you learn a whole
Mm-hmm.
bunch from everybody, and then you make it your own, mash it all up, and it comes out as this thing. No matter what that thing might be, that's how it happens. And for anyone to say that's like saying I'm reinventing the wheel here. I'm just doing it different. That's all. Same way, same thing, different way, better results. Breaking that whole the definition of insanity is what? To just over and over and expect different results. Well,
Yeah,
you change the over and over just a little bit, and guess what? You get different results.
that is true. That's something we used in training too, is everyone keeps trying to go out to the same thing, the same thing with the same solutions and expecting different results. And like, no, if you're not getting the results you want, you need to change something.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things I think I took away the most. Well, not the most, but it was one of the higher up on the list of things I took away from my first full year dealing with mock scrapes and with your system, is that I need to bring them down a little bit more. Some of them were just perfect,
Yep.
and some, like I said, it depends upon which direction the deer came from. And so that might be more of understanding your deer and what they do.
Yeah.
And if you realize that
You're
they're
right.
coming more from one way than the other, you might need to adjust that. And that's what's going to happen
Well,
is I think I'm just going to play it safe and go lower.
and that's just it. You can't be, I mean, and you can't be afraid to try different stuff and to tweak it a little bit, each individual setup, like you said, because one place might not be like the other. One approach might be different than the other exit even. It's just, if it
Hmm.
come one way, it's going to hit them in the face a little different than coming the other way, because they may go under it, like you said.
Hmm.
And then some of those locations where these things are so high, sometimes it's because they look, I mean, it happens. These guys buy a adjuster rope and they get it and they can't get it to come that low. The overhead is too high for that particular rope. Well, there are fixes for that. There are easy fixes to that. If a guy notices it and can't figure out what to do, and all he's got to do is call me or text me or whatever, and I'll tell him, you know what I mean? It's simple as a piece of paracord and you're fixed. It's as easy as that. One little piece of paracord, pull her down a little bit, and guess what? Now it's in the right place.
I was going to ask you, what would what would you recommend then? So I mean, if you don't mind sharing, I mean, obviously it sounds like we're going down that rope
Yeah,
that
yeah.
route
No,
anyways.
I'll give some here. Yeah,
If they notice, all right, so yeah, my overhang is a little too high, and all I have is this just a rope, or maybe even the just a rope square is just not long enough. So you were talking about paracord. What are you doing with it? What do you mean?
well, first off, I mean, is this private property that you're able to basically do whatever you want, attach things to
Well,
trees, things like that, right? So you take a piece
yeah,
of
let's just assume
paracord,
that most of this is going to be private property.
right? So you take a piece of paracord, the limb that you want to hang your rope on, simple as this. You just tie the paracord around it, pull down on it until you get the branch to where it needs. Leave the rope there, and just pull the branch down until it's the right height. Go over to the
Hmm.
tree, drive a nail in it or whatever, run a screw in it and wrap that around it. And now you've pulled that down and tied that down. It'll stay there. And it's in the right height, and it's not, that rope is back here out of the way. Simple as that. It's an easy fix.
Yeah.
You can also do that to create natural licking branches when everything else, this kind of goes back to the thing I talked about to people when they ask about, well, where would I put this, or why would I hang it here? Well, if you go down like a field edge, and I think you and I may have even talked about this, and you stand on the edge of that bean field or corn field and you look down the edge of it, and all you see is 15-foot canopy above. All you see is branches hanging over the field at 15 feet because the farmers cut it all off, right? Because of their combines and things. It's a featureless edge. There's nothing on that edge. Any activity like that is going to be inside the edge where the trails come out, but that's also where all the trees are. You've got that soft edge of grass or raspberry brambles or whatever out on that edge. So you get these branches that are like that. And I guess 15 feet was a bit extreme for the height, but you get what I'm getting.
Right. I get what you mean.
And you can take one of those branches and just pull it down and tie it. So that's comes down right in the edge. Well, now you've put a feature. You've put something there that they walk out of the edge of the woods and they turn their head and they go, hey, what's that? On a beeline to it. You don't even have to do anything to that. You don't have to spray anything on it. You don't have to do anything to that because now you've created a destination on that edge. So, however, if you spray it with scrape magic, we all know what's going to happen next.
Hello, everyone. This is Sean Smith of the Chasing Your Experience podcast. We interrupt this episode to let you in on some exciting news. If you're looking to upgrade your mock scrape game this year, then head over to scrapedoctor.com and fill your carts full of scrape magic, maybe a poison ivy or two, just a rope squared, or even just a rope. And then enter the code CountryFried10. That's Country Fried, spelled with a K, the number 10, and save yourself a little bit of money. And now, back to the pod. We know.
And I'm gonna leave that part of the conversation right there at that with the pulling down and tying down. That's a whole nother subject.
Whole other topic.
Yes, it certainly is.
Yeah, and I get that could be very debatable.
And and before we go any further into that the credit for that idea is not mine. I got that also came from Tony LaPrette.
Okay.
Because like I told you before, that guy, I follow him closely. I admire him as a land manager and as a deer hunter, besides he's my friend. You know what I mean? He's just a solid guy. He doesn't lie. If you ask him a question, he tells you the truth. Like it or not, you get the truth. And I respect him deeply. So I take a lot of the stuff that he does and maybe I put a little twist of my own on it.
So this is the only question I want to ask about this. Some guys might not want to use something that's going to permanently damage, even if it is private property. They don't want to like drive a nail or something into it. Could they achieve kind of the same thing by using like a tension hitch or something, or they can adjust the tension?
You can eliminate that entire thing by just taking like a Walmart tent stake and just driving it in the ground on an angle so that they can't pull it up as they're working on the end of that branch. I've done that as well. And then you don't do anything in the tree at all. I do it into the tree because that gives you a little more of an angle on the cord to keep it out of any kind of a path. Because if you put it down into the ground like that, the deer will inherently they will work that cord because they like it.
Yeah.
They like to rub it, and lots of video of that too. And I honestly started spraying mine with scrape magic. Once I saw him using it, I sprayed with scrape magic and let him have at it. So that's the solution to that problem.
I've heard it's because they like the tension, and that's why some some ropes don't work out as well because there's not enough
resistance.
There's not enough pressure or enough tension in it that they can actually rub up against it, so they don't like it.
They like the resistance and they like that snapback.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, thank you for that little tidbit there for some of the listeners out there that are listening and want to think, well, none of this will work, and they, you can go buy the poison ivy or future products as they come out, if they come out in different lengths and stuff that are out there. But there are a couple of solutions out there you can
Absolutely.
work on.
For
You go about it a
guys,
couple different ways.
I mean, and we've talked about this too, for guys that can't afford anything maybe but the bottle of Spray Magic, pull that limb down and spray it, you know? You're going to
Mhm.
get the same results. You're going to get great results, and I get it. We get it that not everybody can afford everything all at once, so, but do whatever you got to do to make it work.
So I got to take a little drink of childhood here. I found some Tang. It's been forever since I've
You
had
gotta be
Tang, and I
kidding me.
found
Where'd you
some.
find it?
Local Save a Lot here in town had it,
Oh, we got to Save a Lot not far from here. I'm going to go look.
and they had a whole stock of it. I'm like, Tang. I'm like, I have not had that in forever.
Wow.
So
I honestly, I don't know that I could remember the last time I had Tang.
I'm sorry I had to take a little drink of childhood there.
Aging ourselves there, I think we're dating ourselves a little bit.
There's probably people that at some point will listen to this, like, what in the world is Tang?
They're going to look it up, and the first thing they're going to find is the astronauts. And they're going to go,
Right?
oh, those guys are old. Oh,
That's right. Reminds me of a comedy act where this guy's talking to the comedian was talking to the crowd and somebody younger, and he's like, "Can you even name an astronaut?" She goes, "Buzz Lightyear."
yeah, that's close.
Yeah, no,
It's close, Now it's Katy Perry.
don't get me started
I,
on
w-
that.
I won't. Please don't. I won't. I had to, though.
Don't. I was thinking about that the other day, and I don't. Maybe I'll say something off air with you because I had a theory about that, and I'm
Yeah.
like, especially how the door opened in instead of out.
Yeah, we'll talk about that off air.
I had some questions about that, so we'll talk later on that.
Yeah, there's a couple
So,
questions I had about that whole thing.
well, folks, if you're still here, don't forget to like and subscribe and follow the show. So, what else do you want to dive into? We talked a little about height. So we've and we're going to break this down, each one of these little subs topics in each one of these episodes to make it a little bit shorter, more digestible for people. So just to kind of recap on some of the things we discussed height wise. Now, I think I like what you did originally when you were given a visual for people, right? Because I got to be honest with you, there's some people that you tell them 40 inches, and I worked as a trainer. Yeah, I worked as a trainer, and we talked about tourniquets. And now, mind you, when tourniquets, what we talk about is how you fold them up and get them stored away for one-handed operation. So you usually tell them to start off with a 6-inch tail. Now, depending who you talk to, 6 inches can be this much or it can be this much.
Yep.
So it really depends on who you talk to. So I like the analogy you give because you give a little bit more of a visualization for somebody about the waist. I'm not discrediting what you are saying because there are the people who, when you say 40 inches, they know what 40 inches is or close to it, and they'll run with that. So I wouldn't abandon the height. And you also gave the qualifier to me when we talked about Adams. Like, see, Adams is like 6'4". It's not waist to him. He needs to go a little bit lower than that. He might want to think about thigh with his because just how tall he is. And so I wouldn't discredit that completely and get away from that because there are some people that do need to see that visualization. But the 40 to 44 inches for the people who know what that is or are more mechanically inclined than I am, that makes sense to them. Like, I got it. So I like how you're moving forward and adding another reference for somebody to guess off of.
Yeah.
So we talked about that, trying to hit that sweet spot. The next thing was that there really isn't, I guess we could say there's optimal, but there is no such thing as like too low, but there is a such thing as a too high. And we need that to be so they can see it, right? And I think if we can take that a little bit more than just height, what about just the cover around it?
Yeah.
Is this something that
We can talk about that. That can go right along with the height discussion a little bit. And then, I mean, honestly, that part of it goes along with I take those ropes, especially the Justa ropes, the small ones, the short
Mhm.
ones. When I use those in, say, like an apple tree, a pear tree, a cherry tree, a white pine, a red pine, all of those specific types of trees where you get all that little bit hanging underneath, right? So you go under there, you hang the rope, and then you look around the rope directly around it. And I call it the competition, and I start breaking off branches around it until it becomes the visual attraction in that very spot. There could still be stuff outside of it, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
It could be 6 inches away from the rope. It could be a foot. I don't know how it'll play out. I don't know what it'll do. It might just be a few branches creates a big open hole. But I always take away the competition at first because I want them to work that rope because I put it there for a specific reason. If they start working a natural licking branch 6 or 7 inches away from that, they may not stand the way I want them to stand. They may not approach the way I want them to approach. I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff in my head that tells me why I want to do it and why I should do it. And that's another part of the teaching thing and the please listen to me thing because it matters.
Mm-hmm.
It's just part of the maintenance of the scrape. If you're going to use something other than natural, I don't break anything off if I'm using just natural foliage and branches. I don't break stuff. One branch at the beginning and up inside, I'll break it. So again, that visual, it drops out, might be 3-4 inches down from the bottom, and that cluster of leaves that are needles or whatever kind of tree it is gets sprayed. Some on the outside edge, and that's it. So yeah, that part, yes.
Well, it makes sense just to pique their curiosity on that, where that becomes the focal point for them. It doesn't get lost in the noise of everything else that was there.
That it goes kind of back to that featureless edge thing.
Mm-hmm.
Side of an apple tree is pretty featureless, truthfully, unless something's hanging down out of it. It's got the same shape basically all the way around. That's why I focus on that type of trees. Mature fruit trees, mature overgrown orchards are magic. Stick that one in your notebook and keep it. Find one of those somewhere on public land tucked way back in. You found the best place on the place. So
I'll be honest with you, I got to up my public land game a little bit. I've been spoiled. I've got a couple people that are close to me that has some pretty decent farms that, I've had permission to. I've lost one or two in the past, and that most of the farms I hunt are people that are really close to me. And when that happens, that really hurts a little bit because it stings a little bit, but I understand. Luckily, I still have a couple, but I do need to up my public land game. And I think my buddy Sam, I have two Sams. I got my Colorado Sam who, co-hosts with me on the podcast. And then I've got my Ohio Sam that was the one that just recently purchased off the website. And he wants to go down to Kentucky to public land. I'm like, it might be game. I'm going to tell you, I don't have a lot of high expectations of my success rate down there, but I'm willing to give it a try. So
get your, throw some scrape magic in your bag, throw some drags in there and lead them right to you, my man.
Listen, I want to go all out because I think he's going to be able to get away for like 4 or 5 days. And so I'm like, I think I can make that happen. We can, I'm not going to say where we're going to go, but
please don't.
I've got an idea of where I want to go.
Yeah. Well, if you've got that amount of time to hunt it, you'll have at least 6 hours to set it up and do some crazy stuff and then be ready to hunt it.
Mm-hmm. At least give me time to go down there and scout a little bit, get an idea.
Rapid scout. You can look at it from above.
And once again, I have realistic expectations too.
I'm
not looking to shoot a boon. What's that?
You're going to shoot a spike, aren't you?
Oh, maybe.
That'd be great. I would love it. I would still cheer.
No, I have realistic expectations. I don't when I do stuff like that, like if I'm gonna be out of state, like I will shoot whatever's legal. And basically because it is. I mean, let's be real.
Second year in Kentucky,
I don't have time to come back down here and do this again.
Second year in Kentucky, I almost shot a 4-point because his antlers were backwards. They looked like somebody put him on backwards, and I almost shot him. He was only a year and a half old, but he was cool.
Imagine what he's going to be like in a few years. What if he keeps it? That would be interesting.
Yeah, well, he never showed back up, so they must have turned around the right way, or he didn't make it through the winter. So,
speaking of oddball deer, I know we're off topic. We're getting towards the end here. Did you see that reel I put on about that weird, goofy deer that we had running around?
Which one? No, I don't think I did.
We called him Stumpy.
I don't think I did.
If you get a chance, look at this. This dude looks like he was compacted. Like, how moose legs are so long that they look compacted because of how tall they stand up.
Yeah.
Well, just imagine a white-tailed deer compacted. He's not taller than white-tailed deer. He's about the same size as all the other deer. He's just really compacted. He's got like a moose look, but the size of a deer. So he's like really compacted. I know I said that like 5 times now. I can say at least 4 more times. And he's just the goofiest looking deer I've ever seen. And my wife, we started calling him Stumpy, and then he's had a couple other names too. But my wife I showed her the couple of the trail cam videos and photos. She's like, "Oh, it's Elliot." Which if you've ever watched Open Season, there's Elliot. He's like, "Hey, it's Elliot." I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna start calling him Elliot now. But yeah, if you get a chance, look at that reel. It's kind of he's interesting. He was showing up on one. He's actually one of the most active on our scrapes, or the scrapes I was running. He would show up on at least the one that I had a mega that had came to once or twice. He didn't come to it a lot, but he'd come to it. I'm pretty sure that was on the fringe of where he wanted to be. He didn't really like being out there.
Yeah.
And but that one that Elliot was there all the time.
He's not one of those little dwarf deer, is he?
No. He's got one antler that grows down.
Okay.
And he's got like a cluster on this side. And then he's just got a bunch going on with him. And I don't know. I'm not running cameras right now. I'm getting ready to go out and start doing that here pretty soon, to start getting my cameras back out and running. Because I don't want to pay the Tacticam bill throughout the year, to be quite honest with you. But I'm going to get those back out, and I'm interested to see if Elliot made it through the winter.
That'll be fun to watch. And that can be the Elliot watch.
Right?
Somebody
I was
Elliot.
wondering, my buddy had shot a mule deer buck in Colorado that had testicle damage, like something happened. I don't know if he snagged them on something or whatever, but they were injured, right? So he was a cactus buck, so he's a little different. And that's why I was beginning to think was wrong with Elliot until he gave me like a full rear end view of him. I'm like, yeah, no, that's not it.
Yeah, not that. Yeah, well, I shot a hermaphrodite buck in 2018 that it had both. But when I flipped it over, the nutsack was as big as my head. It was just monstrous, but it had female parts. So, because we sent them in, I gave it to the DNR. We opened it up and took the the whole reproductive tract out of it, and they sent it in and said that deer had never been bred been bred as a doe and had never bred as a buck. So take that for what it's worth. Poor fella. But it had
poor deer.
1 4-point antler on one side and a spike on the other, and the skull plate is offset.
Huh.
So, and it
poor deer.
Not a very big rack, you know what I mean? So
that probably was never going to be either.
No, and I don't know that it even ever shed it. You know what I mean? I don't know that it ever shed. It may have just held that rack forever. I don't know.
I don't know what the prevalency rate of that is in deer, because I've never come across it ever.
It's the first one I've ever personally seen, in person. When I post about it, I'll get 3 or 4 people that will say, well, I shot one at this, my uncle did, you know what I mean? But not a whole lot of people, and for whatever reason, I mean, let's be real, 2018, everybody had a cell phone and everything. And why I didn't take a bunch of pictures is beyond me. The only excuse I have is it was raining. You know what I mean? I didn't get my phone out because it was raining.
Well, I've foregone doing I've foregone doing the hero shots because of rain or just crappy weather. So I get it. It's like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah. Or there's always that part too. I don't want to do this. I'm not doing it. I'm the guy that'll hang one up and let it hang until the next day because I don't want to do this. And then you got to pull them down and fight with them because they're nice and stiff. So yeah, well, should have done this last night. But you got to have.
It'd have been a lot easier last night.
Need the daylight pictures though. You got to have them in the daylight. Nobody wants to see pictures in the dark.
Yeah, I know.
If you take pictures in the dark, you get accused of poaching, especially if it's a big one.
Ask CJ Alexander how that went for him.
Yeah, it went great, didn't it? So here's another rabbit hole we could go down real quick. What about this? Did you see the CJ Huff thing or the Huff buck? They dropped the score.
No.
They dropped the score from 211 and whatever it was to 206.
Why?
I don't know all the details. But it's been on Facebook. They did a panel score of it. There was some kind of discrepancy with one of the actual scorers. There was some kind of an issue with him. What that is, I don't know what I mean. And I don't want to say anything about the guy because I don't really have any details on it, and I don't have a dog in the fight other than it's too bad for him, because it just tarnishes his legacy and it's not his fault.
Yeah, I have heard that when you get bucks or you get deer that size that are going to be, they can make a book somewhere, like in pretty high in the book, they will do a panel on that and they'll take, just to make sure. But man, that's a 5-inch discrepancy though.
Yeah, and
The
it's
guy,
been a long, long time, so there's no way that it lost that much just sitting and drying. It just didn't. It's not possible.
well, they gotta wait 60 days before they do it anyways,
Right.
just for that purpose.
Right, because they figure that's all the drying it's going to do. Well, we know if it sits for 20 years, it's going to dry some more. Nobody's going to have, so I don't know. I think the whole scoring system for deer needs to either be completely revamped and, because I'm a fan of the Buckmaster scoring system. If they grow it, they get it.
Yeah.
If they grew it, it counts,
Yeah.
And I guess Boone and Crockett and all of them were the gentleman's scorebook back in the day and everything was pretty and nice.
They do award symmetry with those scoring, and that's what the Buckeye Big Buck Club, they use the Boone and Crockett. I mean, Boone and Crockett's pretty much used by Pope and Young. The Buckeye Big Buck Club, that's like the standard. And then you got Buckmasters that came out and came with their BTR score. So
Commemorative Bucks of Michigan uses it.
What's that?
Commemorative Bucks of Michigan uses it. I mean, most every organization does.
Yeah. And so with the BTR score, I was talking to somebody who had shot a 200-inch buck, and she got both scores done. And I asked her, said, so what was your key takeaway? And this is not verbatim what I asked, but it's the gist of it. I said, so what was your big takeaway, or what you noticed was the big difference between the two scoring systems? She goes, well, Buckmasters doesn't take deductions off and the other one does. And I don't like that. So
nobody nets are for fishing.
Yeah.
It is what it is though. I mean, and I get it. Some guys want that purest score and that's good. Go ahead. I'm all for that too. Do what you want to do.
Yeah, I'm curious as to why they focus so much on symmetry versus not, and why that was such an awarding factor. I'd really like to somebody, if you're listening and you know the answer to that, please comment. I would like to know why they decided to go with that. There's a lot of antler
guys out there too. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole episode for you. Get one of these antler guys to come on and explain all that. Why it's the way it is. Reach out to Jay Fish. See if he'll come on and talk to you.
Okay.
That guy has the king buck. Or did have. I don't know if he still has it, but he did have it. He owned it.
Okay.
That would be a great conversation for you to have. That would take you down a deep, dark rabbit hole. The antler scoring
deep, dark
debate.
hole. Well, I know there's a debate even like there's some intricacies to that. If you watch a deer, I mean, I'm sure you watch deer get scored. Well, I think one of the bigger debate things is that common base, especially when you start talking about non-typical deer.
Yep.
Or what makes a non-typical versus a typical, or what's going to count as a point or not.
Yep.
Or, off of this common base or not. And that's one of the big things. Is it a common base or not? And so I know that was some of the sticking points with the Alexander buck when he showed up on Hunter. They were talking about that, but that doesn't matter because he poached a deer. Yeah. And I can say that because he's been convicted of it, because he pled to it. So, yeah. Hey.
It is what it is. It's unfortunate.
It is what it is. You poached that deer and you got what you deserved. Mm-hmm. I still don't think you got what you deserved. I think you should have gotten more.
There should have been
I'm a hunter, and
I agree.
I'm a hunter, and I. What's that?
I think it should have been worse.
Fortunately, we're hunters. Most people that's going to hear those cases aren't. So
right.
When it comes to us, you stole from the tribe, and that's no bueno. But to them, it's just like, whatever. Like, it's just a deer. It's just a deer. They get hit by cars every day. So what's the big deal? Well, I think we covered a good bit of stuff. We covered the height thing pretty well for what it is. And we added a couple of key points too, like, try to make it the focal point. Don't hang it too high, get it down a little bit lower. I think, and we give them a good reference point to think about too. Is there anything else you want to add to that? Anything we didn't touch on you think we should?
No, I think we're good for this time. I think we've covered what we need to cover to strip around.
Right. I think some episodes coming up. We got the failures, and as a whole is coming up. We got a couple more to throw at you too. So make sure you stay tuned for those as they start to publish and things. But James, Scrape Doctor, my man, I can't thank you enough for the time you take to sit down and talk to us and spread your knowledge and just try to, raise the bar when it comes to just whitetail hunting and just add another tool to people's belts. And I appreciate your work, your insights, and your efforts to do that.
Appreciate that. And everybody just needs to remember that memories are forever and they're free, and they should get out and make some.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for the podcast. But until our experiences cross paths again, may you guys have the courage to fail, but yet the humility to learn. And as always, we hope you stay safe out there, and God bless you. Thank you for listening to the Country Fried Outdoors Chasing Your Experience podcast. Before you go, don't forget to leave us a review and follow the show on the podcast platform of your choice. Are you hungry for more Country Fried Outdoors? Then follow us on Instagram at Country Fried Outdoors or subscribe to our YouTube channel at Country Fried Outdoor Productions.